Who will run Star Wars after Kathleen Kennedy leaves? One of Hollywood's hottest and hardest jobs opens up. Who wants to call the shots at Star Wars? No, really, because it's kind of a thankless job. They'll be trolled on social media, parodied on South Park, and criticized as too woke. Where's the lie? Too corporate, too slavishly devoted to George Lucas's vision? I'm sorry.
I mean, the thing that started it all, there wouldn't be Star Wars today without those original movies. It's so ridiculous.
The powers that be at Disney-owned Empire haven't managed to get the firm off the ground in 6 years. I would say 13, but that's okay. An eternity in today's hyperactive culture, and the movies that have appeared in the decade plus since Disney acquired Lucasfilm for $4 billion have been an exercise in diminished returns. Oh, wow, they're actually admitting that now, both financially and critically. Meanwhile, Disney Plus spin-off television shows such as The Acolyte have been unceremoniously canceled after one season. I think it was ceremoniously canceled, Chris. Yes. Don't you?
Yes.
And yet within hours of the report that Kathleen Kennedy will step down as president of Lucasfilm at the end of 2025, executives, creative talent, and mega producers were scrambling to get on the radar of Disney CEO Bob Iger and Disney Entertainment Company Chairman Alan Bergman. By the way, anybody who was scrambling to get this job, Chris, would be the first person you say no to, right? This is... Honestly, This is like a president or king job. It's like, I don't want it. The people who want it right now just want it for the label. They know nothing about it. They'd be the worst people imaginable. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There are only so many of these jobs to be had. After all, and cracking the code on Star Wars could mean wielding a Kevin Feige-like influence in entertainment. Well...
is he? Do you think he might be like a good manager? He hired good people, creative people, and that first 10 years of Marvel was more Favreau, Gunn, among others, and the Russos. And then since they're not there, it's just Feige, and what Feige's done without Favreau, Gunn, the Russos has been Phase 4 and 5. So and you notice on the Disney Plus shows, it's a Kevin Feige production, right?
Yes.
It says that now.
That's part of the video, and yes.
So what I'm saying
he's gotten rid of all the good people around him, and he was good for a while, but Rob Liefeld's not wrong. He's lost his fastball. Kennedy's Star Wars has cycled through a wide range of A-list filmmakers. She's fired more directors than she's hired, from Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who she fired, Patty Jenkins, who she fired, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, who she fired. That's not to mention a litany of in-demand talent like James Mangold, who directed the worst Indiana Jones film ever made, and that's in a world that has Crystal Skull.
Yeah.
Taika Waititi, who hasn't done anything, Donald Glover, who hasn't done anything, Rian Johnson, where's that trilogy? Kathleen Kennedy has never had trouble attracting top directors, but keeping them employed has been an ongoing challenge. So the perfect candidate must offer more than a passive interest in all things Skywalker. Like Marvel's bosses Kevin Feige, they must be deeply versed in the mythology that Lucasfilm established in 1977. Okay, here we go. I might get back to this article later. It's a little long, and I kind of want to be in control of all of it. So here. Kevin Feige, his name has been pushed around a little bit. Kevin Feige, arguably, Chris, you've heard this too, bigger Star Wars fan than a Marvel fan.
And not only that, there were rumors, and it was very public, that Feige was going to do a Star Wars movie. Remember that? Do you remember that was in the news?
I do, Chris. I do.
That was out there, that Feige... There's a Rian Johnson trilogy. Feige's doing a Star Wars movie now. In fact, they were asked about it on red carpets. You can find footage.
Yes. And Kathleen Kennedy said there never really was one seriously in consideration. And from her perspective, okay, here, I can't tell the whole story. But I know the story. I know it. So from her perspective, she's not lying. Just saying, she's not lying. From her perspective, she's not lying. But it was in serious development from Kevin Feige's point of view, based on what he was told by management at Disney. That management at Disney was talking to Feige, not really talking to Kathleen Kennedy, but Kathleen Kennedy's kind of hard to talk to. Kathleen Kennedy has a lot of layers. She's also, she is a micromanager, but she's also a bit aloof.
That's a good description.
Bit aloof. Yes.
That's a good description. I've heard that she is sort of in control, but absent. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Doesn't have a creative bone in her body. So Kevin Feige was not just going to do a movie. He had a plan, a full presentation to take Star Wars, we'll just say somewhere else, to do something different. From a Star Wars fan. Now, whether you like Kevin Feige or not, that's what was going to happen. It was a full plan. And Kathleen Kennedy was blindsided by it because of corporate politics. I got to be careful here. Management not communicating with each other. This shit happens in corporations. So if you've ever worked in a corporation, you know what I'm talking about. Like
Right.
One lower manager will have an idea and think it's so good that like once he springs it on the big boss, the big boss will just love it. And a lot of times the big boss, for whatever reason, ego, we'll just say, for example, ego, and they feel threatened, tells it to fuck off.
There are layers of approval in big corporations,
Yes.
especially in Hollywood, what Mike Benz would call the blob. It's the blob of all this middle management, and they all want to assert their power.
Yep.
You know, but you realize the person you may be talking to hasn't even talked to their boss. So when you're pitching something, you may pitch something to a low level or a development executive, but then you have to pitch to their boss. Like, wait, am I selling it to you or someone else? It's like, no, you realize there are layers and layers of approval. And even if it gets to Kathleen Kennedy, she 100% can't, green light something because she has to go to the money people.
So,
right.
Right.
She can develop stuff, but yeah. So all I'm saying is layers and layers of
layers. And Kevin Feige was told Kathleen Kennedy knew about everything. And she did not. And they had a meeting, and it was short. The end. Don't know how the relationship. I mean, like, you could kind of look at it as, well, she didn't know. I was told she knew. She didn't know. I kind of get where she's coming from, but it didn't play out like that.
Her people did not keep her informed. The other thing is, the bigger thing with that, it's basically people in Hollywood like doing a dick measuring contest or a clit measuring, if we're referring to Kathleen Kennedy. But what's more interesting to me is what was Kevin's vision.
What was Kevin's vision? Because
I'll say this, I don't think Kathleen Kennedy ever had one other than girl boss, girl boss, girl boss, emasculate men. That was her vision.
Oh, yeah. What I know is there's EU books on it.
Okay.
There's extended universe books on what the vision would be. And it would be taking things outside of Star Wars, outside of the galaxy. Something to that effect.
Huh, okay.
There's EU books on it. That's the vision. I think a lot of people would have been, well, I know a lot of EU fans would be completely down with that, but, well, maybe not. But, like, if it was adapted properly, which it won't be. Kevin Feige is, God, he's younger than me. I think he's like 51 or 52.
Yeah, he's got a decade or two in him, at least.
Oh, yeah. Kathleen Kennedy is old. She was never good at her job. She was the worst studio head in the history of fucking Hollywood, dude.
I had a friend reach out to me who saw my video last week, who said that he was at Amblin.
Oh,
when the news came down about Kathleen Kennedy, running Star Wars, and they all were like laughing or like, why? You can't run that. So,
yep.
Yeah.
And, well, the proof is in the pudding. Can't deny the success of the Force Awakens is clickbait. It was, we were promising you something in the trailer. The reuniting Han, Luke, and Leia, and it never happened.
It never happened.
And the pure love of Star Wars propelled that movie into the stratosphere. And then it's just been diminishing returns. And there hasn't, as the article points out, there hasn't been a movie in the theater since 2019. Lucasfilm's last effort was an Indiana Jones flop with Harrison Ford in it, directed by a competent Oscar-nominated director. So here we are talking about an old woman who should be writing $12 checks to her grandkids, running Star Wars into the ground when she never should have. She stayed there for a long time because of her relationship with other men. Her relationship with George Lucas and Steven Spielberg kept her in power. Yeah, Chris. So Kevin Feige's a logical choice, considering that he had a plan for Star Wars that was rejected. Well, somebody in your building who's successful, and you go, well, why would you take him off Marvel? Maybe he'd want to. Maybe after Doomsday and Secret Wars, he's like,
yeah.
And maybe he gets a win. He goes, okay, I'm going to go over here. I'm surprised he didn't do that after Endgame. You could, if he retired after Endgame, Chris, he'd be a legend.
Yeah,
absolute
legend.
He
would be a legend. Mic drop. Boom. I did this.
Yep.
Take a vacation for 5 years and then return to do something else, or a couple years. And the thing is this, for him to take over, the bar is so low.
Yeah.
For what fans expect out of Star Wars. If he literally had two men bashing each other with lightsabers in a store, in a loose story.
If he had two men on the screen together, Chris, for the Star Wars
two
story.
men being manly. Like, that's what I mean. Like, look, Disney absorbs IP and turns it into, Disney is a girl brand. It's Disney princesses.
I've always said that. Yes. She was cooked when South Park made a special about her, and they were trying to be nice to her at the end. Remember that. They're trying to be nice to her at the end. Like, oh, it's just this, she just got caught up. It's not really her fault. It's all her fault. That's what being in charge is. It's taking responsibility.
Nerdrotic.com. Please subscribe.